Good evening, and welcome. Tonight, I invite you to step back into ancient times, to a land where myths became legends, and a small city grew into one of the greatest empires the world has ever known. This is the story of the rise of Rome, a tale that will gently carry you into a world of history, allowing your mind to drift off and rest. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The Mythical Origins of Rome. Our journey begins in the distant past, a time where myth and history intertwine. The city of Rome traces its origins to two brothers, Romulus and Remus. Legend tells us they were the sons of Mars, the god of war, and were abandoned as infants on the banks of the Tiber River. Their story begins not with war, but with the nurturing care of a she-wolf, who found the helpless twins and sheltered them. In the quiet forests along the river, the young brothers were raised among nature, watched over by this mysterious, gentle creature. As they grew older, the bond between them became strong, though, as fate would have it, their ambitions would eventually set them on different paths. Romulus, a visionary, wanted to build a new city. He chose the Palatine Hill, one of the 7 hills of Rome. There, under the golden Italian sun, he began to build. But the brothers' dreams clashed, and in a tragic turn of events, Romulus took the life of his brother, claiming the future city as his own. Rome, named after its founder, was born out of myth and blood, yet destined to grow into a symbol of power and civilization. In the early days, Rome was little more than a collection of humble huts, surrounded by dense forests. The people who lived there were shepherds, farmers, and traders. They would gather around small fires as the sun set, the smell of earth and wood smoke lingering in the air. Slowly, Romulus's small settlement began to grow. He welcomed outcasts and refugees from other lands, giving them a place to start anew. And so, the population of Rome began to expand, its heart growing larger with each passing year. Chapter 2. The Early Kings of Rome. Rome was ruled by a series of kings in its early days. These kings, each with their own vision for the city, shaped the future of Rome in their own way. Romulus was the first, remembered for his strength and leadership. Under his guidance, Rome grew not only in size but in confidence. After Romulus, a new king took the throne, Numa Pompilius. Unlike Romulus, Numa was a man of peace. He believed in the importance of tradition and religion, and it was during his reign that many of the customs and rituals of early Rome were established. He built temples, including the Temple of Janus, and created the office of the Vestal Virgins, who would tend to the sacred fire that symbolized the eternal spirit of Rome. Numa brought a sense of calm to the city, focusing on harmony rather than war. Each king that followed Numa added something unique to Rome's growth. There was Tullus Hostilius, who expanded the city's military might, and Ancus Marcius, who worked to improve Rome's infrastructure, building bridges and roads that connected the city to the outside world. As you imagine these ancient rulers, picture a young Rome still finding its way, its people gathering in the forum to hear the words of their leaders. The city was small, but its potential was vast. Chapter 3. The Founding of the Republic. After centuries of rule by kings, the Roman people decided they wanted a new form of government, one that would give them more power and freedom. And so, in 509 BC, the Roman Republic was born. The last king of Rome, Tarquin the Proud, was overthrown, and in his place, the Senate was established. This new republic would be ruled not by one man, but by the people themselves, through elected officials known as consuls. In the early years of the Republic, Rome was still a modest city, surrounded by rivals on all sides. The Roman people were proud of their independence, but they knew they would have to fight to protect it. The young republic faced constant threats from neighboring tribes and cities, and it was during this time that the Roman legions, the backbone of the Roman military, began to take shape. The legions were more than just soldiers. They were a symbol of Rome's discipline and strength. Each legionnaire was trained not only in the art of war, but in the values of loyalty and service to the Republic. Picture a Roman camp at dusk. The soldiers, weary from battle, resting under the open sky, their armor stacked neatly beside them. The campfires flicker softly in the night, casting long shadows over the fields as the soldiers speak in hushed tones, thinking of the homes they had left behind. Though the early Republic was often at war, it was also a time of growth. Rome began to expand beyond its borders, slowly gaining control of the surrounding lands. But this expansion was not just about conquest. It was about building connections. Roads were constructed, linking Rome to distant towns and cities, allowing trade to flourish. The Republic was laying the foundation for what would one day become a vast empire. Chapter 4: The Punic Wars and the Rise of Rome's Power. As Rome grew, so did its ambitions. By the 3rd century BC, the Republic had become a force to be reckoned with in the Mediterranean. But Rome's path to greatness was not without challenges. One of the greatest threats it would ever face came from the powerful city of Carthage, located in North Africa. Carthage was a wealthy and prosperous city, with a powerful navy and vast trading empire. The rivalry between Rome and Carthage culminated in a series of conflicts known as the Punic Wars. These wars would test the strength and resolve of the Roman Republic like never before. The First Punic War began in 264 BC, as the two powers clashed over control of the island of Sicily. For over 2 decades, the fighting raged on, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But in the end, it was Rome that emerged victorious, claiming Sicily as its first overseas province. The Second Punic War, however, was even more perilous for Rome. It was during this war that Rome faced one of its greatest adversaries, Hannibal, the Carthaginian general. Hannibal was a brilliant strategist, and in 218 BC, he led his army, along with a contingent of war elephants, across the Alps to invade Italy. The journey was treacherous, and many of Hannibal's men and elephants did not survive the harsh conditions. But those who did posed a grave threat to Rome. For years, Hannibal roamed the Italian countryside, defeating Roman armies and spreading fear throughout the Republic. But despite his victories, Hannibal could not take the city of Rome itself. The Roman people, though shaken, remained resilient. Eventually, the Roman general Scipio Africanus led a daring counterattack, striking at the heart of Carthage and forcing Hannibal to return home to defend his city. The war ended in 202 BC, with Rome victorious once again. The defeat of Carthage marked a turning point for the Roman Republic. Rome was no longer just a city-state. It was now a dominant power in the Mediterranean. With Carthage weakened, Rome began to expand its influence even further, conquering new territories and bringing them under the control of the Republic. Chapter 5: The Age of Expansion. With Carthage defeated, Rome's expansion continued at an astonishing pace. The Republic began to push further into Europe, conquering the lands of Gaul, Spain, and Greece. Roman legions marched across distant lands, bringing with them not just military power, but Roman culture, language, and law. In the newly conquered territories, Roman roads were built, connecting distant provinces to the heart of the Republic. These roads, straight and sturdy, became the lifeblood of the empire, allowing goods and information to flow freely across vast distances. Picture a Roman road at sunrise, stretching out into the horizon, quiet and peaceful, yet full of the potential for new adventures and discoveries. As Rome's territories grew, so did its wealth. The riches of the Mediterranean poured into the city, and with them came new ideas and influences. Roman architecture, literature, and art flourished as the city transformed from a modest republic into a thriving metropolis. The streets of Rome bustled with activity. Merchants selling their wares in the Forum, senators debating the future of the Republic, and citizens going about their daily lives. But beneath the surface, tensions were beginning to rise. Chapter 6. Internal Struggles and the Gracchi Brothers. Though Rome's external power was growing within the Republic, there was unrest. The expansion of Rome had brought wealth, but also deepening inequality. The rich grew richer, acquiring vast estates, while the poor, especially the farmers who had lost their lands during the wars, struggled to survive. Rome's streets echoed with discontent, and the social fabric of the Republic began to tear at the seams. Enter the Gracchi brothers, Tiberius and Gaius, two men who would come to symbolize the Republic's internal struggle. Tiberius Gracchus was the elder brother, and in 133 BC he proposed reforms to redistribute land to the poor and limit the power of the elite. His ideas resonated with the common people but sparked fury among the Senate, which saw its privileges threatened. The streets of Rome became a battleground of ideas, and in a fateful clash, Tiberius was killed. His younger brother, Gaius, would continue his fight a decade later. Gaius Gracchus was passionate, determined, and charismatic. He took up his brother's cause, proposing not only land reforms but also new policies to help the urban poor. His influence grew, and soon the Roman Senate saw him as a threat to their control. In the chaos that followed, Gaius met the same tragic end as his brother. Violence silenced another voice calling for change. The deaths of the Gracchi brothers marked a turning point in the history of the Republic. They had raised crucial issues about inequality and the concentration of power, but those issues remained unresolved. The Republic, once a beacon of cooperation and shared governance, was slowly fracturing, and the seeds of a much larger conflict were sown. Chapter 7. The Rise of Julius Caesar. As Rome's internal divisions grew, so did the ambitions of its military leaders. Among them was a man whose name would be remembered throughout history: Julius Caesar. Born into a noble family, Caesar was both a skilled politician and a brilliant military commander. His rise to power began with a series of campaigns that expanded Rome's influence, most notably his conquest of Gaul. Between 58 and 50 BC, Caesar led his legions through the dense forests and across the rivers of Gaul, subduing the tribes that inhabited the region. His victories were spectacular, bringing immense wealth and prestige to Rome, and elevating Caesar's status among the people. The Roman legions admired him for his leadership, and the common citizens revered him as a hero. But as Caesar's power grew, so did the suspicions of the Roman Senate. The Senate feared that Caesar's military success would lead him to seize absolute power. In 49 BC, they ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. But Caesar, ever the bold strategist, made a fateful decision. With his legions behind him, he crossed the Rubicon River, a symbolic act of defiance that declared war on the Senate. The civil war that followed was fierce. Caesar faced off against Pompey, his former ally and now his greatest rival, as their armies clashed across Italy, Greece, and Egypt. It was a conflict that shook the foundations of the Roman Republic. In the end, it was Caesar who emerged victorious. By 45 BC, he had consolidated power, and the Senate, seeing no other choice, named him dictator for life. Yet Caesar's rule would be short-lived. On the Ides of March, 44 BC, he was assassinated by a group of senators who believed they were saving the Republic from tyranny. As the knives struck, Caesar's fall was sudden, and the fate of Rome, once again, hung in the balance. Chapter 8. The Rise of Augustus and the Birth of the Roman Empire. The assassination of Julius Caesar plunged Rome into chaos. His death left a power vacuum that was quickly filled by a struggle between his supporters and his enemies. Among his supporters was his adopted heir, a young man named Octavian, who would later be known as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. At first, few would have expected Octavian to emerge as Rome's new leader. He was young and inexperienced, but what he lacked in age, he made up for in political savvy. Over the next few years, he skillfully navigated the political landscape, forming alliances and defeating his rivals, most notably Mark Antony and Cleopatra. The conflict between Octavian and Mark Antony culminated in the famous naval battle of Actium in 31 BC. The fleets of the two great leaders clashed on the waters of the Ionian Sea, and, after a long and brutal fight, Octavian emerged victorious. Antony and Cleopatra fled to Egypt, where they would eventually meet their tragic end. With his enemies defeated, Octavian returned to Rome as its undisputed ruler. In 27 BC, the Senate granted him the title of Augustus, meaning the revered one. And so began the Roman Empire, with Augustus as its first emperor. Under his leadership, Rome entered a period of peace and prosperity known as the Pax Romana. The empire expanded to its greatest territorial extent, and Augustus's reign became synonymous with stability and strength. The Roman Empire, under Augustus, was a marvel of architecture, culture, and governance. Roads crisscrossed the empire, connecting its farthest reaches with the city of Rome. The grandeur of the empire could be felt in every province, from the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Germania. Rome had become a symbol of civilization, its influence spreading across the known world. Chapter 9. The Golden Age of Rome. Under Augustus and his successors, Rome entered what many would consider its golden age. The Pax Romana, Roman peace, was a time of relative stability, where the Roman Empire experienced significant economic and cultural growth. It was during this time that many of the iconic landmarks of Rome were constructed, from the Colosseum to the Pantheon. Imagine the Colosseum standing tall against the skyline, its arches bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Inside, thousands of spectators would gather to watch gladiatorial contests, naval battles, and other forms of entertainment. The roar of the crowd would echo through the stone structure as warriors fought for glory on the sands of the arena. Beyond the city of Rome, The empire's vast infrastructure ensured that goods, ideas, and people could move across great distances with ease. Roman roads, straight and expertly constructed, stretched for thousands of miles, connecting the empire from east to west. Along these roads, traders would travel with carts full of spices, silks, and other treasures from distant lands, bringing a taste of the exotic to the bustling markets of Rome. The provinces of the empire, too, began to flourish. In cities like Alexandria, Antioch, and Carthage, Roman culture blended with local traditions, creating a rich tapestry of diversity within the empire. The influence of Rome could be felt everywhere, from the design of buildings to the way people dressed and spoke. Yet, even in this time of peace, there were challenges. The sheer size of the Roman Empire made it difficult to govern, and the strain of maintaining such vast territories would eventually take its toll. Chapter 10. The Emperors of Rome. As the empire continued to grow, so did the role of the emperor. Augustus had set the standard for Roman leadership, but not all of his successors would live up to his example. Some emperors were great builders and reformers, while others were infamous for their cruelty and excess. One of the most notorious was Nero, who ruled from AD 54 to 68. Nero's reign is remembered for its extravagance and its dark episodes, such as the Great Fire of Rome, which many believed he had started. As the flames engulfed the city, Nero is said to have watched from a distance, playing his lyre as chaos unfolded. Whether this story is true or not, it speaks to the fear and disdain many Romans felt toward their emperor. In contrast, emperors like Trajan and Hadrian brought stability and prosperity to Rome. Trajan, who ruled from AD 98 to 117, expanded the empire to its greatest territorial extent, conquering lands as far as modern-day Iraq. Hadrian, who followed him, focused on consolidation, building fortifications like Hadrian's Wall in Britain to defend the empire's borders. The legacy of these emperors is still visible today, in the monuments they built and the stories passed down through generations.